The clock read 9:47 p.m. And in that single moment, the sky above Israel transformed into something no defense analyst had ever modeled. Not a skirmish, not a limited exchange. What followed was 3 consecutive hours of the most ferocious aerial bombardment ever recorded against a modern nation-state. And by the time it ended, everything the world assumed about advanced missile defense had been permanently shattered. This is not my opinion. This is not media spin. This is raw data, cold physics, and the brutal mathematics of modern warfare. Let us begin with a single number. 847. That is the total count of hostile projectiles launched against Israeli territory during this single operational window. Missiles, rockets, and unmanned aerial vehicles, all launched within a 3-hour time frame. Break that down mathematically, and you get one incoming threat arriving every 12.8 seconds. Non-stop, without a single pause, for 3 full hours. Now compare that to the previous record. The prior most intense attack involved 430 projectiles compressed into a 90-minute window. This new assault essentially doubled the volume of fire while also doubling the duration. The scale of escalation here is not gradual. It is exponential. And the defense system built to stop, it was about to face something it was never designed to survive. To understand what happened to that defense system, you need to understand one critical statistic. The Iron Dome, under normal combat conditions, maintains a 90% interception success rate. That figure is not marketing. That figure is battle-tested across years of real-world engagements. But during this 3-hour window, that 90% collapsed. It did not dip slightly. It did not experience a minor fluctuation. It plummeted all the way down to 62%. Sit with that number for a moment. 62% means that 38 out of every 100 projectiles the system actively attempted to intercept successfully bypassed the shield and reached their targets. And that terrifying figure does not even account for the hypersonic threats that exceeded interceptor velocity. It does not account for projectiles flying above the maximum engagement ceiling. It does not account for the dense cluster attacks where fire control computers simply ran out of time to generate a targeting solution before impact. The true penetration rate was significantly worse than 62% implies. Now here is where the logistics transform from alarming into catastrophic. To fight back against this assault, the defense forces expended 1,240 interceptor munitions across all active defense platforms. 1,240. That number represents 150% of the entire monthly domestic production capacity for all interceptor types combined. In 180 minutes, the nation burned through more than a full month of manufacturing output. And the factories building those replacement interceptors sit inside the very geographic zones that the attacking missiles just demonstrated the ability to reach and penetrate. But the attack was not simply overwhelming in terms of volume. That would have been manageable. What made this event historically unprecedented was its architectural sophistication. This was not a mass launch of a single weapon type. This was a precisely engineered multi-spectral assault designed to force every layer of the Israeli defensive architecture to fight a completely different battle simultaneously. The first weapon category deployed was ballistic missiles. Long-range, high-arcing, stratospheric trajectories. These threats are highly visible on radar, and the upper-tier defense batteries are specifically optimized to handle them. But here is the strategic genius embedded in their deployment. These ballistic missiles served a dual purpose. Yes, they were lethal threats in their own right. But tactically, they functioned as premium decoys. Every long-range interceptor consumed, engaging a ballistic threat, is one fewer interceptor available for everything that followed. The upper-tier defensive batteries were deliberately bled dry. While those systems were locked onto high-altitude tracks, the second weapon category entered the picture. Medium-range, solid-fuel missiles launched from positions in Lebanon. These weapons require minimal preparation time. Their trajectories fly too low for the upper-tier systems to engage efficiently. They arrived timed specifically to saturate the mid-tier defensive layer while the upper systems were still occupied. The sequencing was not accidental. It was engineered. Then came the cruise missiles. They are subsonic. They fly at extremely low altitude. They use terrain following guidance to hug the landscape, exploiting valleys, ridgelines, and urban corridors to mask their radar signature until the last possible moment. The primary radar algorithms optimized for ballistic arcs struggle enormously with low-flying terrain-hugging threats. By the time detection occurs, the engagement window has already shrunk to seconds. Finally, the airspace was flooded with loitering drone munitions. Slow, cheap, individually non-threatening, but economically catastrophic in volume. Each drone costs approximately $20,000 to produce and deploy. Each interceptor missile fired to destroy one costs between $50,000 and $100,000 depending on variant. Every drone engagement is a guaranteed financial loss for the defender. And when hundreds arrive simultaneously, the decision becomes impossible. Spend the premium missiles destroying cheap drones, or preserve the budget and absorb the impacts. There is no winning answer to that equation. The tactical doctrine attempted to adapt in real time, shifting to anti-aircraft artillery for drone engagement to conserve missile inventory. But gun systems require direct line of sight and have severely limited range. A significant volume of drones penetrated regardless. The result of layering all four of these distinct threat categories was total defensive paralysis. The upper batteries were fighting stratospheric ballistics. The mid-tier was chasing medium-range precision missiles. The lower tier was simultaneously trying to engage short-range rockets, terrain-hugging cruise missiles, and drone swarms. All three layers, all at maximum operational tempo, all for 3 consecutive hours. And all three experienced critical interception failures because the simultaneous threat volume exceeded both the physical ammunition supply and the computational bandwidth of the battle management systems. The Iron Dome does not fail because of mechanical weakness. Its engineering is genuinely exceptional. It fails when the mathematics of simultaneity exceed its design parameters. When 15 rockets arrive on 15 different vectors and only 8 interceptors are ready to fire, 7 impacts are not a malfunction. They are arithmetic. 7 impacts that the system calculated, evaluated, and then mathematically accepted as unavoidable. Because 7 threats were heading for open fields. And 8 interceptors were allocated to the 8 threats heading for population centers. That is the brutal computational logic running inside the system every second of every engagement. During peak saturation, 67 distinct geographic locations across the country recorded impacts within the same 3-hour window. 67 simultaneous active disaster zones. Emergency response infrastructure is engineered around sequential causality. When 67 locations are simultaneously reporting structural collapse, fires, and mass casualties, that sequential model disintegrates entirely. There are not enough ambulances. There are not enough fire brigades. There are not enough trauma teams. The human cost emerging from preliminary assessments confirms a minimum of 70 fatalities and over 300 injuries. And with search and rescue still working through dozens of collapse sites, both figures are virtually guaranteed to increase. But in the cold strategic calculus of what this event represents, the casualty numbers are almost secondary. The primary strategic outcome is the demonstration of a repeatable template. A proof of concept for an attack architecture that existing defenses cannot reliably neutralize. The attrition mathematics are now undeniable. If an assault of this scale were repeated every 72 hours, the interceptor inventory would approach zero within approximately 2 weeks. Once those magazines are empty, the only remaining protection is a concrete shelter. And while shelters preserve human life, they cannot protect power generation infrastructure. They cannot protect water treatment systems. They cannot protect the economic activity that sustains a functioning modern society. The psychological dimension compounds everything. For years, The population lived beneath rocket fire with a foundational sense of security rooted in trust of the defensive shield. When that shield visibly fails in real time, when missiles that previously detonated harmlessly in midair begin obliterating apartment buildings instead, that trust does not bend. It fractures. The command and control sophistication required to execute an operation of this complexity across 4 simultaneous geographic fronts represents a capability tier that previous intelligence assessments significantly underestimated. The network was assessed as degraded. The performance demonstrated proves it is fully operational. 847 projectiles, 1,240 interceptors expended, 62% effectiveness under maximum saturation, 67 simultaneous impact coordinates, 70 confirmed fatalities and rising, 180 minutes that permanently altered the strategic landscape. This was not the most devastating attack in terms of raw destruction. It was something far more consequential. It was the operational proof that the assumptions protecting an entire nation can be systematically dismantled by a sufficiently sophisticated and sufficiently patient adversary. The interceptors are depleting faster than they can be replaced. The civilian population is absorbing a psychological toll that compounds with every successive wave. And the adversary has now demonstrated it possesses both the inventory and the command architecture to repeat this template whenever the strategic calculation demands it. This was not a final strike. This was a demonstration. A message delivered in physics and fire that says clearly and without ambiguity, we have found the ceiling of your defense, and we can touch it whenever we choose. The data does not lie. The mathematics do not negotiate. And as of this moment, there is no counter move visible on the board.